National poll out today shows that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are essentially neck and neck. The poll from Quinnipiac University, again, shows Hillary Clinton with 42%, but Trump just 2 points back and certainly within the margin of error at 40%. And when you factor in Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, included here as an option, he draws 8% of the vote. And so both the presumptive nominees of the two major parties fall under that 40% mark. We want to bring in now Mo Elleithee. He's the executive director of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service, also a former senior spokesman for Hillary Clinton and the former communications director for the Democratic National Committee. Mo, it is great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
First, your reaction to those numbers, which on one hand paint a very interesting picture for the two major presumptive nominees, but also perhaps a bleaker picture for an American electorate that seems awfully dissatisfied.
Yeah. So I think a couple of takeaways. Number one, you know, the polls are all over the place right now, right? I mean, there was another poll that came out just a couple of days ago that had her up 12 points in the national head-to-head matchup. I think the average, the running average right now has her up by about 6 or so if you average all the polls. And so, you know, my guess is that, you know, I'd rather be in the Clinton camp than the Trump camp right now, just from straight polling. But the bigger point is I'm actually not surprised if the reality is a little bit closer to this. I'm not sure it is. But if it is, I wouldn't be too surprised because we are just a very polarized electorate right now, right? I mean, the person who's got the D next to their name starts with 40%. The person who's got the R next to their name starts with 40%. And you're fighting over the last 20. And it will fluctuate a bit. But we are very polarized right now, and this was never going to be easy. Even with Donald Trump in the race, he is tapping into that sort of dissatisfaction amongst a certain group of the electorate. He's going to be an attractive candidate for some of them.
But we've seen him have 2 or 3 of the worst weeks of his political year, and yet, to your point, there doesn't seem to be any ability on the part of Hillary Clinton, perhaps, to break away, to put any, it suggests that no matter the self-inflicted wound here, this is going to remain a neck and neck race.
You know, again, that's in this poll, and in some of the other polls, we've actually seen her lead widening, and you're seeing where it really matters in some of the battleground state polls, her lead starting to open up, and that's why I'd rather be in the Clinton camp right now. Having said that, if anyone were to think that that all they have to do is wait for Donald Trump to continue to screw up and that would be enough for victory, they'd be sorely mistaken. She's still got to get out there and make her own affirmative case. Some might argue that his ability to dominate the headlines, even when it's over his own screw-ups, actually hurts her because it just crowds out her ability to put forward her own positive message.
It has certainly been the stated de facto strategy of Donald Trump himself when people ask him about his skeletal staff, his meager, if non-existent fundraising. He will counter with, but I can reach 10 million people with the punch of a button, and anytime I step to a microphone, every monitor in you know, every TV, every camera goes to me, and I can do it my way. Again, it worked in the primaries. Is it a workable strategy for a general election?
To a certain point, right? To a certain point it is. I mean, the fact that he can dominate 2 consecutive media cycles with a tweet, 140 characters can change an entire national conversation. It's pretty remarkable. But at some point, people are going to want to hear more than just those 140 characters. He's going to have to actually run a sophisticated ground game that's data-driven. He's got to organize. He's got to put people on the ground. He's got to make policy pronouncements. I think you're seeing him begin to recalibrate a little bit.
Here's the deal. I mean, he hasn't tweeted in 2 days, and there was certainly grist for the mill. But he again, with the release of the Benghazi report, silent on that with what happened in Turkey. I mean, he released a statement, but we didn't see the reaction perhaps
like
that we saw in Orlando.
Right.
It suggests perhaps that there are at least other people who've gotten a hold of the wheel.
We've seen a couple times now where he's recalibrated after something happened, and he, you know, does what he's supposed to do. He plays by the rules for a little bit. But then he can't help himself, and he starts to, you know, you start to see flares of the old Trump, and all that is good. It's bad. The Clinton campaign cannot rely on that, though. The Clinton campaign has to make sure they are breaking through with their own positive message about why her. It's not enough to say why not him. She has to say why her.
Quickly, he actually was about as specific as we've ever heard him be in a policy speech, two, in fact, yesterday in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and in so doing, seemingly outflanked a Democratic candidate to the left. First time, you can argue, since Herbert Hoover, we've seen a presumptive GOP nominee do that. What do you make of the trade policies that he laid out yesterday?
Yeah, I think he was speaking very specifically to Bernie Sanders supporters yesterday. What Donald Trump has understood, actually, to his credit from the beginning, we don't actually live on left versus right anymore.
Yeah.
We live on up versus down, and people are feeling screwed by the system. And so he's speaking to that. His supporters hate Wall Street and trade as much as Bernie Sanders supporters do. The problem that he faces is that he is maybe the worst messenger for that. Maybe I would have taken his speech about anti-globalization a little bit more seriously had it not been a couple of days after he was in Scotland cutting the ribbon on his golf course, where he said that the collapsing British pound would be good for business. Right? He's just a terrible messenger on this.
It would seem, if nothing else, that the polling suggests that a disproportionately large percentage of the electorate will be very dissatisfied come
There's some truth to that.
November 9th. Well, Elleithee, we really appreciate the time today.
Thank you.